happy to have you back. In this video, we're going to be going over the bodice embellishment. Okay, so you're going to get that oversized rectangle that we talked about before in the previous video. And I do this, like I said, I do this whenever I'm embellishing the bodice piece, whether it's hand embroidery, lace, tucks, whatever. I do an oversized piece. So I mark a center front on the rectangle, and it doesn't actually need to be like in the middle of that fabric. It just needs to be roughly in the middle, and you're going to have some extra on either side. But you want to have a center front so you know, like, you know where to put your embellishments in reference. You know what I mean? In relation to this, to your center front, if you will. And as I mentioned in the other video, I was originally going to do the Chanel that flower, and I did a trial run, and this is about as small as I think I can create this flower using this applique technique, and it's too big for the space that I have here. I put the collar on and it's just like, it's too big for everything. So instead I did this little diamond shape, and I'm just freehanding it at the time, but I have a little document that you can download from my website. I mentioned that in the last video. And then I put 3 rows marking where the pin tucks are going to go later on. And I have these also on the downloaded sheets, but of course you can skip these or you can move them around. You can add more than 3 on each side. You can do whatever you want because it is sewing and there are no rules. Isn't it lovely? So then I cut an oversized piece of organza, and I'm going to sew the organza to the wrong side of this blue satin bodice. I don't believe the organza has a right or wrong side, but if I was using fabric with an apparent, right side to it, I would make sure that the right side would be facing up. So you'll have the right side of the bodice facing up and the right side of that organza, whatever your applique fabric, facing up. They're both going to be facing up. Okay? up. So then, I've got my notes. And then I switch around those diamonds, and of course you can do another shape. A heart would be really sweet and rather easy to stitch around. But for the diamonds, I start at one end, and then I stitch around the entire length of that side so my stitches would line up really well. And here's what those diamonds looked like all stitched out. I did use a smaller stitch, something like a 1.5 or so. That way it would kind of give me more hold as I'm doing this applique work. And then I carefully trim around the outside of that organza, being careful of course not to trim through that bodice. And then I'm leaving about a 1/16 of an inch around that organza. And once I was done all trimming, then I had something like this. So next I pulled the organza away from the bodice so I could trim the bodice away without cutting into the organza. And initially I just gave it a rough cut around the perimeter, and then I went back to clean up those, that cut up. And I sort of rolled the fabric like around my finger to sort of bend it up so I could get a close, clean trim. And just take your time cutting all of this out. So next I took the size 90 top stitch needle. Of course you can use a microchip needle as well. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been staying away from wing needles after hearing that they can cut through your fiber. And I really just like the size 90 for little ones. You can go to 100 if that's your preference, 120, whatever. So hem stitching on my Bernina is number 720, and it looks like this in the manual. So just check your manual for a bold stitch like this. And finally I ripped a piece of stitch in the ditch and put that behind those diamonds. And then I went to town on that hem stitch. I'm using Madeira 80 weight thread, and I like to be able to do the hem stitching in one sitting if at all possible. These days that's hard to do, but if all possible, it's just nice to do it in one sitting because you'll get a rhythm to how your machine stitches and the pattern that it is and when you should turn. So like in my machine, I turn after the last time it goes to the side. So I think it goes like front, back, side, back. I can't remember, but that's why it's good to do it in one sitting. But once it goes to the side, I think it goes to the side 2 times or something, and when it goes to the side the last time, I know that's when I turn it to make sure that all my holes are still lining up and it doesn't get yucky, if that makes any sense. So then I tear away that stitch in the ditch, and I found it's best to tear the back like against itself. Like I pull it back onto itself and I pull it against itself, if that makes any sense. And then I use a seam ripper to access the middle of the stitch in the ditch, and again I tore it back on itself to help reduce those little pieces that are left over, and I just pick any of those little pieces out with a tweezer on my fingers or something. So next we are on to the those corded pin tucks. To do these, I grabbed size 8 cording, and I think this size is just a great size for baby garments. And I took my twin needle and I threaded that into my machine. It is really important, at least for my machine, to get one thread on each side of that pressure plate thing. It doesn't matter which thread goes where, just one on each side. I'm not sure if that's true for all machines. I know that it's true for mine though. Just FYI. So then you'll want to play around with your tension setting on your machine, and you'll want your tension to be increased just enough so that the pin tuck will kind of raise together. If you don't increase it enough, then you're just going to sew 2 straight lines of that twin needle. But if you increase that pressure, that tension, what's happening is the bobbin is going to kind of, it's doing a zigzag under there, and it's going to come together with that tension and pop up your pin tuck, so it's nicely and raised. So just play around this scrap piece of fabric until you have it where you want it. Once you have your tension there, then I put the cording underneath that marked line, and I stitched so my twin needle was straddling that cording. And there you go, it's a corded pin tuck. I love these things. They're just so nice and polished. And I gave all of that an ironing, and then my center front pattern piece was ready to be cut out. So I would put my pattern piece back on, make sure it's all centered up and on grain and line, all square, all of that goodness, and then cut out that pattern piece. And there you have it. That is the bodice front embellishment. That's all we're going to do for this video. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you have any questions, of course, put them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one.